Hi, I'm Coy Jandreau, and welcome to DC High Volume Batman. In this monthly companion series, we sit down with the cast and crew of DC High Volume Batman and beyond. Where we last left off in our story was our Independence Day issue where we had the fight between Mad Hatter, Scarecrow, and Batman, as well as Catwoman leaving Batman. And so, fittingly, on today's episode, we've got Catwoman herself, Reba Burr, as well as our lead producer, co-writer, and assistant director, Roshan Singh Sambhi. Now let's bring out Catwoman herself, Reba. We are sitting down with Catwoman herself, Reba Burr. You might also know her as Cat Grant from The Flash, Escape the Midnight Circus, or Jujutsu Kaisen, or Demon Slayer. How are you, Reba?
Hey, I'm doing great.
You're also the voice I hear before me on this very show. I love that you're the introduction.
I do the credits,
that
yes.
I hear all the time.
I go into my audiobook voice when I'm doing it.
But it's like so specifically clean and crisp. It helps me as someone getting into this world go like, I'm settling in. Like it's very comfortable.
Here we are. Welcome to the story. Today on The Batman Show, this is what is happening.
I got to live it just now. That was wonderful. Now, Catwoman is a character that has meant the world to me for so very long. And this is a character I think that really anchors a lot of the human elements to Bruce Wayne and Batman separately.
Yes.
Is this a character you were very familiar with before donning those heels?
So my introduction to Batman in general was Batman Forever, which I know is considered to be the goofiest. That's my Batman. It was really exciting to me because I think it was rated PG-13 and I was at a friend's house and they were watching it and I was like, I'm not really allowed to watch PG-13 movies, but can I watch? And so that's the flavor.
I get it.
And then, I saw the Michelle Pfeiffer portrayal and that's what I think of when I think of Catwoman.
And the character being so iconic and being portrayed so many different ways, was it an interesting moment shifting into the mindset of like, okay, I know the importance of this and I want to make sure I do this justice, but also make it my own? Like when you first found out you were Selina Kyle, what were some of your goals to be like, this is how I perceive this character from this version of the story?
Well, this version of Catwoman in these books is nothing like those campier ones that I grew up with. This is once again, for me, because I hadn't read the comic books, this is the Dark Knight Catwoman. Yeah. To me, it's like the sort of grittiest version of Gotham. And what they really like when they're doing these podcasts is a great sense of realism because they want the audience to be watching a movie with their ears, essentially. We are transporting you with the acting, with the sound mixing, with the sound effects we choose. No matter what we're doing, we're sitting back into it. We're acting as if we're talking to somebody really personally, one-on-one, maybe even more personally than you actually talk to somebody in real life. And realism. Like realism is the only word that comes to mind when I think of this particular show.
It's almost like you're in the heads of the characters with the audio. Like when I think of my inner voice, it's so audio based. And so it's a really different take where I feel like I'm living in the heads of the characters in a way that I hadn't before. And I think that's because of the power of audio and it being personal versus presentational.
In a way, none of these characters are very talkative people.
Right.
Like when you think about Bruce Wayne, Selina Kyle, Harvey Dent, Jim Gordon, they're all kind of, I don't know, it's just another day in Gotham. They're not somebody who goes into the office and is like, hey, how's everybody doing? Let me tell you about my feelings.
Right.
So the only way into their heads is through their thoughts. And so, and even if they are talking, they are not going to be effusive.
It's not honest.
It's not honest because they've got a lot to hide because Gotham's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
It's a scary city to live in. If you don't have a really thick crust around you at all times, you're going to die. And I think that's probably bred into you from the day you're born.
And how has Selina changed the most in your experience from starting to play her to where you are now? Like how has the arc evolved and how you perceive Selina? Because she goes through so many transformations and you also had a different exposure to her growing up with a different take.
Oh my
how
God,
has she most changed?
I understand so much more about her now because these books are which it's my first time experiencing them, just as any listener who's listening to this show before they've read the comic books, she, in these stories, has such a raw, clear backstory. And you can see why she becomes Catwoman. And there's amazing dichotomy, push-pull within her between wanting to be seen and noticed, but wanting to hide and not be noticed. And it's kind of relatable for anybody who's been interested in putting themselves out there, but also wants to, considers themselves a wallflower, wants to hide, or in her relationship with both Batman and Bruce Wayne, like, I want you to notice me. I want you to like me. I want you to want me. But no, go away. Don't notice me. I'm alone. I'm a lone wolf. I operate on my own. But do you like me? Do you notice me? It's just constant with her.
And how very cat-like. Like, that's such an interesting interpretation of like
cat-like.
How we experience cats and wanting their love, but also like, okay, I get it. Like, not today, not right now.
Yes, I'm going to show you my butthole.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, purr, Like, and you don't know what's going to happen next.
No. And yeah, just because you did something nice for me doesn't mean that I'm going to be nice back to you.
Yeah, this is
maybe I will.
It's not a reciprocal relationship with a cat ever. And the character evolves so much in these particular stories. You actually experience her evolution through the narrative, especially in The Long Halloween for me. Were those shades of gray in her morals, even before you realized that, part of what drew you to want to play this character?
Oh, well, I mean, what drew me to want to play this character was the opportunity to play this character.
Sure. It's Catwoman.
Yes, but it's also very bucket listy for me, not because it's specifically Catwoman, but because it is a villain and it is a sultry woman. It is a strong female character. And I think I am just now entering my villain era because I'm over the age of 35 now. And as a very petite woman who loves to smile, I've played a lot of ingenues so far in my life and done a lot of really high-voiced characters. But now it's time for me to be a little bit naughty and a little bit bad.
That's so fun that it was the tonality that drew you to her. And it's so interesting because I think of acting as playing the things that you don't get to do day to day as an outlet. And so very specifically, your career and in life, this is something that's scratching that itch.
Anytime anybody asks me, what are your dream roles? I say, the baddest villain you can find me. And this is just the tip of that iceberg. I want nothing but Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove from here on out.
Wrong lever.
Yeah.
No.
Wrong lever.
So actually, let's make Emperor's New Groove too.
I actually do a really good Yzma impression.
My favorite, not appreciated enough Disney film of all time. That is the
best
classic
Disney film of
period.
all time.
I agree. Yeah. And what a villain. Now, and also turns into a cat. Now the Catwoman portrayal. Right there. It all ties in. Now, this is a character who's got the sultriness we're talking about, has the duplicitousness, has all those things. When you're manipulating your voice and finding that dynamic, what were you most surprised by to get into a rhythm of? Was there anything that you mapped out when you first found out you're going to play Selina that then as you were developing, you were like, oh, I want to pivot this way or I want to drop into this? Did anything change?
So in the script, there's often times where she has to literally purr.
Sure.
But you have to make it not too jarring and too out of character.
Yeah.
It's usually when she's battling, she's in costume and she's so I guess that was maybe something that was kind of a new vocal find when creating the character, and that leads to more playfulness in her dialogue as opposed to just seriousness, and which is definitely the direction you should go with her. She is nothing if not constantly teasing you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard even for me playing her to understand when she's not full of shit.
Oh, that's fun. Because I don't know if she would know.
Yeah.
Because she's so in
I'm
that mindset.
not sure she's very in control of her actions. I think there's two sides of her brain, and one is in charge, and that's not the thinking part.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, she finds herself out robbing something. I don't think she really knows why she's there.
I think there's so much compulsion.
Yes.
And I think that wouldn't be something she'd meditate on. Like the character wouldn't dive into
She
that.
doesn't, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also very cat-like. I think the character's so well written that it always ties back into like, well, of course, Catwoman. And that's beautiful.
Which is fascinating to me as somebody who is now learning a lot more about the history of Catwoman. I went back and just did a very cursory research of what she looked like in comic books before these ones. And from what I've seen, she wore a cat mask, like a furry one.
Back in the day,
as opposed to latex, and was stealing stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a little less like swish, swish of the tail, if that makes any sense.
It was more cat burglar in a cheeky way. It was a different interpretation.
And yet, as the character has evolved and been remade again and again, it's like it was perfect naming her Catwoman even back then, and like the original authors didn't even realize how cat-like she would become.
I think there's an interesting thing that happens with long-form storytelling where the psychology gets to develop with the depth of society. I think when we write characters, there's a thing that happens where it's like, oh, I can add this because we've got this foundation. Oh, I can add this because like the audience trusts it more.
Yeah.
And it's really cool getting to play something that's had this history that you get to like
Hats
add
off
yours.
to the writers.
Yeah. Who knew? They bring us good
Wow.
stuff.
They're pretty good at this.
You know, these writers should write more. These icons of writing. Now, performance-wise, was there any inspiration in vocal intonation or any characters that you'd felt like had some of this flavor, or even cats themselves, or anything that you brought that you wanted to hone in on in your performance?
That's a fabulous question. Definitely not cats themselves, because big secret, I'm not a cat person.
Ah, that's a twist. I don't think Catwoman... I know Catwoman would be, but I don't think Catwoman would like being. Like, I feel like she'd be sassily. She's so contrarian at times.
Oh,
So I
it's
feel
really
like that kind of
nice
works.
of you to say that, but like she's such a cat person.
No, she loves cats, but I feel like that is almost like ironic because of how contrarian she is.
Ugh, well, I hate cats.
I was trying to give you an out. I was trying to.
You're really nice. I'm just gonna go with the hate that I get.
Okay.
Because it's just my truth. Vocal inspirations, though, is definitely a way I work. But sometimes I'm not aware I'm doing it. So when I think about how I create my low, sultry voice, it's I don't know if I could point you to it's the pantheon of sultry women in media that I've been absorbing my whole life.
So even subconsciously, it just is a sultry element.
Yes. Yeah. Sultry. Sultry is the first word that comes to mind.
And that totally plays. I think you have to have that element to really like bait and switch. I think that's like the cat rubbing on your leg that, you know, you're like gonna pet even reluctantly. Like, there's that element to it. I think the broad pantheon of sultry suits the experience of the audio only element. Like, this is something that has to be played where we have the mind's eye visuals, where we're experiencing it almost like in a hallucinatory way. When you're playing something that you know is audio forward and so aggressively imaginative, is there things you do in the booth that you wouldn't necessarily in video? Is there something that you add to like bring that out of you vocally?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big hand actor.
Okay.
So for voice actors, we are very limited in how much we're allowed to move because nothing can make sound. So you cannot move your legs or your feet because that'll make a sound in the booth. And after over a decade of doing this work, because I am a very physical actor, I come from the theater, and I am... You know, I'm somebody who finds my characters in my body before I create them. So now that all goes into my arms, and I'm kind of doing Catwoman right now for you with my hands. So if you're just listening to this and not watching the video, my arms are up, like kind of bent at the elbows, and I've got my claws going with my fingers. And that really helps me get into sort of I don't know, I'm just gonna take a little something from you right here and be a little sneaky. And if I play a completely different character, my arms will do something differently. Sometimes if I need to be a robot, I will move my arms like a robot.
Interesting.
That really helps me stay in it. And my booth, so I recorded this from my home studio, which is a lovely booth, but it is only 4 feet by 4 feet. So when I'm standing in it, it's just...
There's only so much.
There's only so much I can do.
Do you bring any props? Do you have any? I know you can't like move around, but like if there's like a fight scene or like a jump or like there's so much physicality even in the way you're performing. Do you ever have like things for your mind's eye, or is it all just imagination?
I would not normally, but I actually was asked on this show to try that out. I don't think it ended up being used, but we did play with a little bit of Foley sound.
Fun.
Which, for anybody who doesn't know, Foley is like when you use a real thing to make it sound like something it might not be or something it might be. So, oh, this is rain falling.
Yeah.
But I'm actually just putting my nails on a cup. So it was I think it was in the year one when we were recording her first time getting her suit. We tried I had a rubber dishwashing glove. And I was
that's fun.
Snapped that. I think I got a leather belt out and to try to make it sound like my whip. But I'm also, once again, in a 4x4 box.
Sure.
So maybe better left to somebody in a normal Foley studio that's nice and big.
All the equipment that sounds like versus is like.
It was a great idea that maybe I could do it and it would be like with my voice and sound very meant to be together as opposed to layered. But the sound engineers on this podcast are amazing. So they didn't need that help. They're really, really good at making everything sound super seamless.
It might have also informed some muscle memory though. If you do it as a snap and then they don't use that take, but the next three you do without the snap, it could be an experiential thing.
You know what? I think it really did.
Because you got to live it.
Yeah, there's something even with a yellow dish glove that makes you feel a little bit bad when you go.
Yeah. So even when it's gone, you have lived it.
Yeah. I'm snapping on my latex.
That's right. Dishes or Catwoman, you decide.
Yes. I'm about to wash these dishes.
I love how much you love leading into that version of her, because that is what she's finding in Long Halloween. And what the character goes through is a self-discovery of becoming Catwoman. Feels like it happens as we go in this arc. And where we are in the stories right now, chapter 10 feels like it's to the point where there is a vision that she has of herself and she knows who she is, but it's starting to also affect others. It's like she's projecting it out to others in a more solid way. And I feel like in the beginning of year one or the beginning of Long Halloween, it's more like she's looking inward. And then by the end of Long Halloween, she's looking outward and going I am Catwoman. This is who I am. Is there a moment in the Long Halloween? That's just my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a moment in the Long Halloween that specifically struck out to you as oh, this feels like Catwoman is fully formed. This is her in ink, not pencil.
Oh, well, a really pivotal scene for me, and I'm not sure if this is the fully formed scene. She shows up on a roof and she says something like, I don't want to help, but I might be able to be helpful. Which is so emblematic of her and who she is and her relationship with goodness.
Sure.
Because she doesn't actually want evil for evil's sake. The bad guys are her enemies as well. But she would never want to be accused of being good either.
Yeah.
For some reason, that is kryptonite to her, to use another DC reference.
Perfect.
Yes, cha-ching. I have to do 3 more. Otherwise, they're going to...
Grant, Krypton. Okay, we're good.
So it's at that point that you realize that ultimately inside her, she does want good things for Gotham, and she kind of supports Batman.
Yeah.
She just cannot help but be addicted to always being in tension with him.
And as you think of the character, a lot of people consider her a villain, but I don't personally, which is fun.
I don't either. And definitely not in the same camp as all these other ones who truly their whole goal in life is just to cause mischief in Gotham.
Right. She is not. She just wants the heist.
She almost feels like Batman's partner in a way.
I mean, they get married. They're
Do they?
Yeah. There's a Bat and Cat storyline that it's sensational. And there's this whole beautiful storyline that is debating how they met or when they started dating. And Bruce has one idea of it and Selina has the other, and they never agree on what that first thing was. And that's so emblematic of Catwoman to me that they can't even agree on how it started because she doesn't want to let him have that. There's a defiance even in their own history. And that's so beautiful about dating and character of no, it was on a boat. It was on the beach. It's that to me is Catwoman.
Both of these characters are so focused on what they do when they're in their mask that they are, well, first of all, terrible romantic partners in my opinion. But I can definitely see how they just would not be logging what was reality and always have their minds
And they'd be so
split.
sure. Like, they're so stubborn as characters. They would know this was how it was.
Oh, yeah, because they're both the main character.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's why I love Catwoman too, is like, she's always the lead of her story to me. So they are always the villain of Batman, whereas Catwoman's the lead of her journey.
She is.
So I wouldn't consider her just a villain because that demeans Catwoman.
Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't hang with anybody.
No.
Certainly not these guys.
Yeah, because they know what they're doing. She's making her own moves. But Catwoman to me also is a character that it feels so layered and informed, and you've got so much this wealth of voice work. Like you've done so many things on this journey to this character. Was there anything that felt like it helped inform this take? Like your own work, not an inspiration, but were there any dominoes that felt like it led to Catwoman?
The first thing that comes to mind is actually just me aging. Not that I necessarily think that Catwoman is older. I think to me she could be anywhere from being in her 20s to in her 30s somewhere. So 20 whole years is what I see when I look at her as a character. But for me personally, my own human journey, feel like I am right now coming into a level of, there's something about like being like down in, really in the earth, a groundedness that I feel like I could not necessarily have played her until now. I'm just so much more of a grown-up and so much more mature and chill. You know, I feel like I was if you ever research me online, I talk a lot about dealing with anxiety issues when I was in my teens and my 20s. It's just a subject I'm very passionate about. Sharing mental health resources, totally different subject. But I was an anxious young woman, and I'm not anymore. A lot of that anxiety has floated away. And Catwoman is not an anxious woman. She is confident, and whether or not she's doing the right thing, she really doesn't care, and she doesn't care if you like her. And so that's all stuff that I think I just wasn't ready to play until now. But there is another character I've played somewhat recently that is also on the journey to that, and that's it's a character from the Fire Emblem series, which is a very popular game series that's done by Nintendo, and it comes out of Japan. So this game was called Fire Emblem Engage, and I play a character called Princess Ivy, who is, I think in anime it's called tsundere, where you don't like show a lot of emotion. But you may actually have a lot of feelings on the inside, but you don't really want anybody to see that you have feelings. So that's it's a new kind of role for me.
I like the personal. I like that it feels personal that this character happened for you now, and I do agree. She's kind of the antithesis of anxiety. Like, not thinking about the future and not thinking about other people are the things that cause me anxiety.
Yes.
Like when I'm like anxious, it's about like, what does that person think or what's going to happen next? I don't think she's ever had that thought in her life. And that's so beautiful.
Not once. Yes. So her brain would just shut off before she went there. And I don't know, maybe like a Harley Quinn would have a little more anxiety or worry a little bit more about what people think.
And project differently.
Yeah. Which is truly, I'm not trying to do these DC references.
You wanted 3. The 3 just happened. That's
doing
totally
a really
fair.
good job of it.
That
actually.
totally lands.
Nobody told me I had to.
Also, I like the idea of Harley Quinn as like an inversion of Catwoman. I've always had the thought that, to me, Batman's rogues are so interesting because they're his psychology in the opposite direction. Like, to me, he's a broken psychological study, and Two-Face is like, what if he'd gone into government? And what if the Joker is the opposite of his rule, is the chaos? So every one of his best villains, like, to me, his love of Gotham is like Mr. Freeze's love of Nora. Like, all of them reflect
I love this line of inquiry. I love psychology so much. If I were to go back to school and get a master's, it would be in psychology.
Yeah.
I may do it someday if I ever like.
I took it in college, and that's what kind of led into the talk show stuff. And then comics is like, to me, us externalizing our own psychology through characters so it feels more possible.
Yes, because there is, well, first of all, we just go into so many archetypes of comic books. But acting in general is psychological analysis.
100%.
If you're a good actor, when Jason was on this very podcast just a little while ago, like, you know what a great actor somebody is when they can psychologically analyze their own character based, it's not what's on the page, it's the meta that's underneath everything they say. So as in a way, actors need to be psychologists.
And I agree. I think the best ones are. So my last question for you would be, in my opinion, if you've got Robin being the childhood he never had, if you've got Nora representing Gotham to Mr. Freeze, the government element of Two-Face, to me, Catwoman is always representative of the fun and freedom that Batman longed for in not having a childhood and having all this weight of responsibility. What would your take psychologically be on Catwoman as a commentary on Bruce or Batman?
It's like Batman without the sense of responsibility he feels to other people.
Yeah.
So they both want to take down existing power structures in Gotham that are corrupt and bad. But like she does it in a way that is not beholden to anybody else. She causes chaos.
Yeah.
Whereas Batman is so doing it by the rules. He's supporting the police department. He's, it's very clear that he wants to clean up the city because he has this great love of the city. He's like municipally minded.
100%.
She's not at all.
Well, I totally agree. That is absolutely how I see the character, and it resonates. It reads so much. Like the way you've recontextualized and given new colors to this character that I've loved for 30 years is so apparent and so appreciated. The work here is so special, and there's such a beautiful team, and what you specifically bring to Catwoman as she's a character that I personally think makes Bruce more interesting and Batman more interesting. And there's so few characters that have that for both. Like I think Jim Gordon, Catwoman, and Robin's, they allow for this character to be heightened in such a way. And your take specifically allows that to be heightened even more. So truly, thank you so much for your take on this character. It means the world to me. Always wonderful hearing all the details about bringing very specific versions of very specific characters to life. Love how much Reba Burr put into Catwoman. Now let's bring out our next guest, the one and only Roshan Singh Sambhi. I am sitting down with a man of many hats, a multi-hyphenate, a man who loves this world of DC High Volume and Batman himself so very much, Roshan Singh Sambhi. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, Coy. Thanks for having me.
I love your passion for this, and before we even get into it, it shows so much. I've worked with many adapters and people that produce and people that handle both sides of the thing, and you're always so joyous to do this job, so I just want to give you your flowers before we dive in. I really appreciate how much you love this world, and that makes me wonder, like, how did you get into this format of storytelling, and what made you want to focus on audio storytelling?
I've always loved listening to things. I think for me, what I consider my formative audio storytelling experience was Peter and the Wolf on cassette.
Yeah.
And I think that Peter and the Wolf obsession kind of led me to fall in love with more audio stuff. So I've always loved audio creatively. I think audio is unique in that it's kind of a triangle of mediums that sits in between prose and film and theater. And audio can be, at any given point, kind of like each. Obviously audiobooks and audio prose, there's something that lends itself to kind of spilling out text. But then also you get the intimacy of theater, right? You get two people talking. The ability to dip into that mode is so interesting. And then finally as well, you get the immediacy of film. Obviously, people have said of audio, it's like an infinite CGI budget. And that's absolutely true. Like, if you can imagine it, you can put it in an audio story without having to worry about any number of factors that make that impractical in film or animation. The immediacy of it as well, being seated with the performers. Like, I had a theater background as well as a director, and you do get moments where, like, if Julius Caesar is being stabbed and he scans the theater, right? And all of you feel complicit in that moment because he made eye contact with you before he falls. You get that with audio too. You feel like you're complicit. You feel like you're in it. And I think that is, as a medium, what makes this so unlike anything other. Like, it's not without visuals. It's fluid. It's dynamic. And maybe one of the more dynamic mediums I've had the pleasure of dealing with.
Love that answer. I feel exactly the same. Yeah, well put. And also, Peter and the Wolf is formative for me as well. And this does remind me of that. And like, I couldn't remember it. Like,
amazing.
That was such a part of my childhood and such a reason I love this. And I couldn't remember the name. So thank you. So speaking of our origins and growth, what is your creative background that led to this? Like, what things in your career do you feel like were the dominoes that really fell that led to this moment for you?
I would say I got my start in theater. And what I think I loved about theater, but I didn't know it at the time, was the immediacy not only as an audience member, but also as a creative. I loved the idea that you could set something down in a script. You get the right people in the right room, just 2 or 3 friends, and you already have fundamentally a show, right? It might be a show for your parents,
Sure.
but it's still a show. And I think as much as I've always loved almost every medium, certain things feel out of reach. Your average person coming up as a creative and as a fan isn't going to feel like they can dive into a feature film. That was not so with theater. What I did was I wrote my first show as a theater show. And then I had pretty severe health problems, actually. And the week that I was supposed to cast for it and do final auditions, I was hospitalized. And I came back out of that thinking, well, what on earth do I have? I have a script. I possibly have a canceled show. But I realized that we had been workshopping it that entire time with table reads. And my thought was, well, I felt something very strongly during those table reads. I felt deep emotion. And maybe there is something to listening and to hearing. So we pressed ahead with the dramatized read in front of two crowds at a black box. And yeah, it went better than I could have hoped. And I think for me, that was during one of those shows, I just closed my eyes. And I thought, well, isn't this special too? And audio stood out as something which is this marvelous medium that, it's fully democratized.
Yeah.
You can put your stuff up there, people can hear it. And I moved with the faith that something which is good and something which is available will have its time eventually. And that felt very affirming to me. And I think faith is a very valuable currency for young creatives. Because everything we do, we move with faith that something might happen. So audio felt like a place where faith flourished. So yeah, I put that out there, and we were so lucky. Like, we were Webby nominated off of that first show.
Dude.
Temujin was a play about the early childhood of Genghis Khan, narrated by his childhood friend turned mortal enemy. And yeah, that...
Or Julius Caesar influence.
Well, you're getting... It's all coming together,
I hear
Coy.
the theater kid. There it is, yeah.
Yes, and I actually partially have this work, I think, because more people than I thought listened to Temujin. And someone who started off as a fan of Temujin, who became a very dear friend and collaborator, was actually our director on this show, Fred Greenhalgh.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Small world. I had no idea until this moment.
Yeah. He did a lot of work, signal boosting young creatives, and he listens to everything. He is the world's biggest audio drama nerd and geek. And well, actually what happened in 2023 was he said, Roshan, this probably isn't anything. But I know you read comics. I know you're a big comics fan. Could you just send me 5 pages of just show me a sample that shows how to adapt comics for audio? So what I did was I was on vacation at the time. I had to kind of grab whatever comic that I loved that was sort of in proximity, and that happened to be, in this case, a Vertigo comic. And
typically dense material, not the easiest plug and play this action, this dialogue.
Oh yeah. So I ended up writing a full treatment of the first issue in audio, and I submitted that, I think, within an hour or two of him having asked for that sample. What happened was actually I was at a point in this past year where I was reevaluating this. Things had been slow when I got this call from Fred saying, "Hey, can we speak right now? There's something that I have in mind for you." And he starts the Zoom call, and he just kind of, Batman Year One, he just kind of does it like this on frame. He's like, "Are you familiar with this book?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm familiar with this book." But I couldn't be thinking what you're thinking. And then he holds up the long Halloween, and I'm like, what is this joke? This is either the cruelest thing anyone has ever done. And I think over the course of the conversation, it became increasingly clear what the prospect of this was. To say life-changing is to sell it short. I think this, to me, it's everything I felt like I was put on this earth to do.
Well, it's definitely like a punk rock meets theater journey because I didn't know
Yeah.
about the hospitalization yielding the specificity of audio. I love the perspective of Caesar into Genghis Khan into this journey for you, but that's all coming from a place of like art comes from pressure, right? Like the diamonds that come out of it. So I love that all of this came from that. And I also feel like that's Batman. That's also what makes people love Batman and what makes kids identify with Batman is we always feel like it's us against the world, whether it is or not, but in Batman's case it is. And so when you were a kid reading Batman, what drew you to him and how has that changed now being so informed in this character?
Yeah. I think what drew me to Batman is this perfectly calibrated sense of darkness and hope. Right? Like I think that's the whole thing. And it's easy to get lost in the grit and the gloom, the morbid sense of dread that kind of just fills Gotham.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with Batman for me was, to me, people who understand Batman know how to pull you out from a really dark place. And certainly even when they came to me last year, right, when this job came up, it became a study in how do you take everything that scares you, right? And you just how do you take all that and find that steely resolution that there is a path forward. Yeah, that's what Batman's always meant to me. There's a way forward. Like charge, find it. Yeah.
And has being in this position of adapting and being so versed in the language and wearing all of these hats, but how has that informed Batman to you in a different light? Has that changed any of your perspectives on these stories in particular or in general?
Yeah, so a lead producer position. What that means essentially is it's having a creative opinion on everything. But then I think having the presence of mind and feeling for really our war partners in this.
Yeah.
And just going, you can step back or you don't have to push yourself in that way. Let's save that for something else. We have this beautiful goal, which is one incredible cinematic piece of audio every week. We have this wonderful, talented team, inside and out, pre-production and post. Everything's lined up. And you've already heard from Mike and Vic, our partners at DC, who are essential parts of keeping that going. And working sort of in unison with them on a lot of this stuff is, I strongly believe what elevates a lot of this work. There are times where it's extremely difficult. And I think especially early on in a project when you put out this mission statement of put out a show every week.
Yeah.
A massive
It's ambitious.
audio drama every week. It is ambitious. Our job is to build that runway and to make sure that what starts off as this daunting thing, be listening to when people say, oh, this was tight. Making sure that we dig into that and go, no, we know that you can do it, but can we do it smoothly? And so I think that the process of that over months is what has brought us to this place now where the show it sings. And I think my proudest accomplishment as a lead producer is we have a happy team.
Yeah. And that resonates when you work on something like this is like if that isn't a part of it, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And I think the amount of work and the amount of intensity only yields good stuff if the joy is apparent. And that's definitely there. And narrowing
first.
into co-adapting, which is a very interesting thing with a word-to-word adaptation. What is the workflow with co-adapting and how has that informed your take on the Batman himself?
I would say that with co-adapting, it starts from loving the comics.
Sure.
I don't imagine a world where you do this and you don't absolutely adore this stuff because it really is reading it. And when I'm starting from a blank page, I make sure to catch all the dialogue first. I read it out loud.
Cool.
I just hear how it sounds. And as a side note, I had the chance to talk to Ram V at a Comic-Con last year. He's incredible. And one thing that he was saying was that he has held year one as an example of why more comic writers need to read their stuff aloud as they're writing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
And
I
you
totally
hear
see
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I can hear that in his work.
exactly.
That's interesting.
But for me, I think that holds with the audio is like I always try to get a sense of what people are saying first.
Yeah.
And then from there, I go back and I start the comic again. And this one's just focused on like location and setting and just going like, well, what is unique and specific about this place and this place and this back kitchen for the Maronis, right? Like,
Yeah.
like what about that place has character? And it's really interesting because what you get to do there is not just look at like in cases like Year One where we actually do have the comic script. You can take a look at what the artists were asked to draw, and kind of go, well, what they're doing there in terms of defining the soul of the work for the artists. We get to kind of like be in conversation with that and go, well, how can we take that literally the DNA of the story and share that with the audio? And then there are other cases like The Long Halloween where we really exclusively worked off the page. Is there a clock in the room? What kind of clock? Is there a fan? Is there a ceiling fan? Is it worn down?
Yeah.
Like you do a little bit of investigative work of like
Batman.
like Batman. And that's really neat too, because you're looking for the literal stuff. You're looking for the soul of it. And then I think, that there is like usually a third pass where you're just going through like character. Just like, what about the way Batman is standing, or any actions that are performed? And the important thing with the script is we want to make sure we want to lay the next person up for success. But here's actually a fun story. The day that I got hired for this, I freaked out and I set up a call with Dirk Maggs, who is a wonderful audio creator in this medium. And he's somebody who I've had the pleasure of sort of being like, going to advice in the past.
Yeah.
And we set up this call and he was so kind. He the very next day he picked it up. And he's done like Batman Nightfall. He's also done a whole bunch of stuff with Superman. Like you named the hero and he's done audio versions of it. And so I basically asked him like, hey man, if you're in a room like this, if you get to be present for every single recording session, how do you help meaningfully without getting in anybody's way? The first thing he said was always have something to say, but never say it unprompted. What you want to do is just make sure that people know that if you're somebody who has asked for advice or your input, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
and then they'll ask for it more. And then at some point you might get to do it unprompted too.
Right.
Neat.
Value, show value and hold value.
Exactly. And do it in a gentle way. I think what that has taught me about Batman, I would say, is there is something to quiet, I think, and there is something to not saying anything. And how much power there is in that. A lot can happen when people aren't saying anything. And I think the thing that he said was like, just come from love. Come from love. You're working with masterpieces. And every day you have to show up and you have to like do everything out of love. Yeah, for the people, for the comic, for the writers who made this stuff, for the editors who bled for it. Like, shoulders of giants. And I think basically what happened was I tried my best to put those things into practice. Ever since Year One, where I was in every session, and this speaks to Realm. I think this speaks to DC. Continuously throughout this process, I felt like I got the chance to give it my 110%. And I've only found and felt this warmth and this intense collaboration rewarded and recognized. And I've gotten to share that with the team, and I've gotten to share that with other people, and I've gotten to fight for other people. And that's always been a fight worth having, because everybody on this cares as much about the people as they do about the comic, and they care a lot about the comic.
I like your Bat family approach and the stoicism of Batman relating to audio. I think it's really interesting that there is such passion for the character that does translate to all these different realms. But you also mentioned like an indie sensibility, which is like, this larger than life character, but this indie make it happen no matter what spirit. How do you feel like your particular journey with independent audio informed this broader, you're talking Realm and DC, and like this is the opposite. This is huge. How do you think those two married each other? And the history that you had with the medium led to this, not in a direct way, but informed it?
I think what you learn coming up in indie, and this is true in filmmaking as much as it is true in audio, I would think, is you learn to do a lot with a little.
Yeah.
And when you're working on a tight timeline, and we certainly are, and obviously as a lead producer, this is something that I get to make sure of too, is making sure that all of our resources are going to the places that add the most value. That is something that you rely on. You fight for your life for that in indie. And coming onto here, we've gotten to put some of that into practice, right? Like our approach to collaboration, I think, like I have learned the hard way working with our team of part-timers, right? Like where sometimes you get load. And if it wasn't for the fact that we have this like indie bleeding heart production sensibility of like assuming that people we work with that their time, their energy, their attention are so valuable, yeah, we wouldn't have a show. We wouldn't have a weekly show.
Mm-hmm. I really like that because I do think the independent nature of it is apparent, even though it's such a big character. And I obviously it's airing on so many platforms and it's such a big impact, but the heart of it is so from passion. I don't know anyone on this team that doesn't love everything in it. Now that inversely, there are challenges. What are some of the moments that have challenged you, but you are aware will inform your work going forward? Anything you've learned specifically from this project so far?
I would say that in general, this project has taught all of us a lot about how to move fast, move efficiently, while also prioritizing people. And I guess people is the thing I keep coming to in this project, because that's Bat Family has been a huge part of it. That is in fact what very early on we had a call with, I think it was Mike and Victor. I think someone used the phrase Bat Team. And then Mike Pallotta, who you've spoken to, he went, no. I believe the term is Bat Family.
Correct.
And ever since then, it stuck.
I love that. The human element is the point. I think it takes a Bat Family to run a cave. And that's the point.
It truly does.
And then that's why people listen, is the connection. And final point, speaking of people listening, this is something to me that is approachable to ride or die Batman fans, people that know these stories, that like have them memorized, as well as people that are new to any medium, but especially this audio medium. Like, this is a really beautiful way that you might know Batman anecdotally. You might be like, oh yeah, I know Batman. But like, this is a way to actually get into these stories. What do you want to tease to folks as we get into Dark Victory of something to come for these folks?
By the end of Dark Victory, a lot of things are going to be like set in stone. You get to see so many things born and end. And by the end of this, I think if this is your first time through Gotham City, you leave with this rich, nuanced, storied understanding of the soul of the city, of why these people matter to each other. And that's really special. Yeah.
I also think this is uniquely exceptional at making Gotham a character. I think that this format is so beautiful at adding atmosphere. And I think that's a beautiful way to tell this origin of Gotham in a really unique way. So I think that absolutely translates. I'm so excited for people to hear it. This has been wonderful, man. I appreciate all of the love for people and for Batman and the many, many hats you wear in this show. Thank you for all your dedicated hard work, man.
Thank you, Coy. It's a joy.
I would like to thank both Reba Burr and Roshan Singh Sambhi for joining me today. I love having conversations about these characters so very much with passionate people. I would also like to thank you for watching the show, but more about you later, because first, let's talk some comic books, you lovelies. First up, we're going to talk Bat-Cat. The Bat-Cat special is so very, very special. It is from Tom King and Clay Mann. It is one of the most beautiful renderings of love in comics, because love is messy and because it is in the eye of the beholder. And I love how much that is a part of this story. I love the beautiful vistas. I love the beach scenes. I love how much of this imagery you've seen reflected in adaptations of it already. And this comic is only a few years old. It is one of my favorite Bat and Cat stories ever. Highly recommend Bat-Cat. Also want to recommend Catwoman When in Rome. This is a beautiful continuation of where Catwoman ends up. If you've read Long Halloween before and wonder what happens to Catwoman, there is an incredible Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale, the same team as Long Halloween story of that adventure. Catwoman When in Rome is full of that same rich tapestry of art, that same crime-ridden thriller, all of the things you love about these stories, and I think When in Rome needs its flowers. So I recommend Bat-Cat and When in Rome for you to check out. You can get both of those on the DC Universe Infinite app. I highly recommend it. It is DC's online comic catalog, as well as checking out your local comic shop. Always want to support your local comic shop as best you can. I'd also like to thank you, dear viewer. You allow me to sit in this chair and talk to amazing people about their amazing work and talk about some comics with you. So it truly means the world to me that you're here. Please hunt me down at Coy Jandreau on YouTube and Instagram. Ask me comic questions, ask me other questions. Find me over there. And let's talk some comics. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us in this special episode of DC High Volume Batman. Executive producers for Realm, Carly Migliori and Roshan Singh Sambhi. Executive producers for DC, Mike Pallotta and Victor Diaz. Producer, Adam Boffa. Technical director, Insung Huang. Engineers, Jason Gambrell and Echo Mountain. Hosted by me, Coy Jandreau. Special thanks to Fred Greenhalgh, Kaylin West, Olivia DeRienzo, Sam Ewing, and to Comic Books for Existing.